911. What is the address of the emergency? Pause. There's some pools of blood.
Yep.
In the water right by the river, there's a shoe. All over the place.
Wow.
Chilling, right? That's the actual 911 call that kicks off our deep dive today. A jogger, just out for a run on a Sunday morning, stumbles onto this scene.
Yeah, a scene that led pretty quickly to finding a young girl's body near the Jordan River. It was just immediate mystery and dread.
Absolutely. And that dread, well, it spiraled into one of the most tangled investigations you could imagine.
Oh, completely. This wasn't just, a few twists and turns. It was a maze full of lies, false leads, and this one, insane twist that just threw everything off track for a whole year.
All year.
Yeah. And it eventually uncovered this really shocking truth about deception and revenge.
So our mission today is to really get into that complexity. We're working from these incredibly detailed documentary transcripts, which lets us unpack every single revelation, every lie, step by step.
Right. It gives us a chance to see how it all unfolded, piece by painful piece.
Okay, so let's start with that call. It came in March 11th, 2012. The jogger described, graphically, these piles of blood.
Yeah, 2 large piles, he said, and splatter on the bridge.
And that red kid's shoe right there in the water. He knew this wasn't just some accident.
Definitely not. So police arrive. First thing is testing the blood.
And it was human.
It was. Heartbreakingly, yeah. They searched the whole trail area, didn't find anyone initially.
But they kept looking.
Oh, yeah. Relentless search. And hours later, on the other side of the river, they found her. A young girl's body submerged in the water.
Just awful. And the state she was in, she'd been in the water for hours. Her face was swollen, severe trauma.
Multiple fractures.
Oh.
And this really prominent disfiguring injury on her forehead. The autopsy confirmed it later, blunt force injuries to the head.
And the shoe.
The red shoe the jogger found. A perfect match. Just devastating.
So, who was she? The victim was 15-year-old Annie Kasprzak.
Right. And the night before, the Saturday, her mother, Veronica, and stepfather, James, got home from dinner. Annie greeted them, seemed totally normal.
But then later, around 8:40 p.m., Veronica realized she hadn't seen Annie for a bit.
Yeah, she checks Annie's room. It's empty. And there's a note.
The note said she'd run away.
Oh,
To California.
exactly. Claiming she'd lied about being pregnant, there was a P in the letter, and she just couldn't handle the lie anymore.
Wow. So Veronica and James immediately reported her as a runaway.
They did, and Veronica called Christopher Bagshaw, Annie's boyfriend, desperate to know if he knew anything.
And he said no.
He claimed he had no idea about her plans. But then, the next morning, the news reports about the body start coming out.
And Veronica must have felt just sick.
A cold dread, yeah.
Yeah.
She called the police helpline, and they asked this crucial question. Did Annie wear braces?
Oh, no.
And Veronica, just through tears, she confirmed it. Yes. DNA later made it official. The victim was Annie.
It sounds like Annie had a really tough background before that.
Yeah, reportedly quite challenging. An unhealthy household, moving between foster homes, child services.
But Veronica, her case manager, adopted her.
She did, which is
Yeah.
quite something. And even though Veronica later divorced, Annie seemed to find some stability, some solace with her adoptive parents and their new partners.
Like she was searching for that family connection.
Absolutely. And that desire for, a permanent family, it really becomes central later. When detectives looked at Annie's journals, one thing stood out.
What was that?
Her profound obsession, they called it, with her boyfriend, Christopher Bagshaw.
Chris. Okay. And the pregnancy rumors were everywhere, right?
All over school. Classmates consistently named Chris as the boyfriend, confirmed the rumor she was pregnant with his child, the same thing she mentioned in the note.
Did her parents know?
They knew about the relationship, yeah, even encouraged birth control. But here's the thing, the really key thing for the investigation.
What?
The autopsy. It confirmed Annie was not pregnant.
You're not pregnant. So the note, the
Right.
P, it was all part of the lie she mentioned.
Exactly. It changed how investigators saw things. Veronica believed that false story was tied to Annie's deep desire for a family, something her journals backed up. It wasn't just a random lie.
So naturally, the focus turns squarely onto Chris Bagshaw.
Right. They bring him in for questioning. And because he's a minor, his dad is there. Utah has specific rules about that.
Yeah, you have to advise them of their rights, have a parent or guardian present, or get that waived properly.
It's critical. One wrong move there could tank the whole case later. So during the interview, Chris talks about their relationship.
What did he say?
He said Annie had asked him to run away with her, but he thought it was a stupid idea. He confirmed the pregnancy rumors but denied it was his baby. Said she started telling people about a month after they'd talked about it.
Okay. Anything else?
Yes. And this is big. He brings up a new name. LJ.
LJ.
Yeah. Chris claimed Annie told him this LJ person came to her house. First time anyone mentions LJ. It definitely got the detective's attention.
I bet. What was Chris like during this interview? His demeanor?
That was notable, too. He seemed really tense, barely moved, gripping the chair arms, kind of leaning away from the detective.
Disengaged.
Very flat effect, they called it. Now, grief is different for everyone, but that level of detachment, talking about something so traumatic, it's a red flag.
Definitely concerning. And then he brings up something else, doesn't he? Something about a nosebleed.
He does. He volunteers this story about Annie getting a bloody nose at another friend's house, Spencer Crittle's place, and dripping blood on Chris's shoe.
That seems oddly specific. Why mention that?
Exactly. It felt weirdly specific, almost too convenient, like someone trying to plant an explanation for something before being asked, like maybe setting up an alibi.
And what was his actual alibi for the night Annie disappeared?
He said he was home playing video games for maybe an hour and a half, then went to his grandma's house, just 3 doors down.
Okay.
Tried to visit another friend. They didn't answer, so he went right back to his grandma's and supposedly stayed there all night.
So the police needed to check that out. And the nosebleed story.
Right. Next up, search warrant for Spencer Crittle's house. Look for blood evidence and definitely ask about this LJ guy. Spencer was friends with both Chris and Annie, so he's suddenly very important.
What does Spencer say? Did he back up Chris's story?
Initially, yes. Spencer confirmed the nosebleed story, said Annie had been over. He also talked about LJ.
What about LJ?
Spencer said LJ had messaged him using Annie's hacked email. Apparently, LJ admitted to hacking it, but Spencer never met LJ in person.
Just online communication.
Right. And Spencer confirmed what others were saying. All their friends were warning Annie about LJ. He was making threats, maybe had gang ties. They told her to stay away.
Did Chris mention LJ's threats too?
Yeah, Chris added he'd spoken to LJ once on the phone. Restricted number. Said LJ claimed he was cool, but was coming for somebody else.
Okay, so with both Chris and Spencer pointing to this threatening, unseen figure, LJ becomes the prime suspect.
Absolutely. He rockets to the top of the list, even without a face or a real identity.
How do you even investigate someone like that? It's like chasing a shadow.
It's incredibly difficult. You're relying on secondhand accounts, digital traces. It's tough, but that's where all their focus went.
Until the phone rings. And the case takes a completely unexpected turn.
Oh, you could say that. A huge turn. This woman, Joanna Franklin, calls the police. She's already mixed up in some alleged credit card stuff.
And she says?
She says she witnessed Annie's murder, and she wants immunity.
Whoa. Okay. Did she mention LJ?
She did. Said she knew LJ quite well, and then she drops another name, John, a completely new suspect.
So now there's LJ and John. What was her story?
It was intense, highly animated, pressured speech, but somehow detached emotionally. She described LJ and that girl. She didn't even use Annie's name at first in a bathroom.
Okay.
Said the girl laughed at LJ. He grabbed her face, slammed her head into a wall, blood from her ears, nose, mouth. Then he kicked her, tied her up, threw her in a car.
God, that's graphic.
Incredibly. She detailed taking the body in a Suburban to the canyons, then claiming Annie went swimming and didn't come back. Joanna even said she helped clean up the blood with bleach and redress the body.
She implicated herself in the cover-up.
Yep. And she gave descriptions. LJ shorter than her, Hispanic, wide, 19, John, a convicted felon, drug dealer, gang member.
Did any of this line up with the actual evidence?
Here's the thing. Her description of Annie's clothes, red and black top, pants, shoes, it was a perfect match to what Annie was wearing when found.
That's compelling. It must have seemed like they finally had it.
It really did. They moved fast, raided John's house.
And what do they find?
Things that seemed to scream cover-up. Freshly painted walls, carpet ripped out in the hallway, red stains still visible on some doors.
Wow, that looks really bad for John.
Exactly. It all seemed to fit Joanna's story perfectly. Strong circumstantial evidence.
So they bring John in. What's his reaction?
Complete denial. Vehemently denied knowing Annie kept calling her Brittany, actually. Said he wasn't even home that Saturday night, just kept saying, I didn't do it, and asking for a lawyer.
Okay, but they have Joanna's testimony, the scene at his house.
Right. They felt pretty confident. But then the lab results come back. This is the insane twist they talked about.
What was it?
The DNA from the stains in John's house. Not Annie's blood.
What? Seriously?
And his phone records. They put him nowhere near the crime scene that night. Investigators were just floored, utterly bewildered.
I can't even imagine. After all that, So back to Joanna.
Exactly. They bring her back in, press her hard, and she breaks.
And admits.
She admits she lied. The entire incredibly detailed story, fabricated.
Why would she do that?
Revenge. Pure revenge against John. He apparently cut her out of some kind of deal, maybe drug-related, so she made it the whole story, using details she got from news reports about Annie's murder.
Unbelievable. So she derailed the investigation just to frame someone.
For an entire year. And John, his real alibi for that night wasn't exactly clean either. He was actually involved in a completely separate crime, a kidnapping, which he later pleaded guilty to.
What a mess. A whole year wasted chasing a ghost conjured up for revenge.
Yeah. Back to square one. Investigators had to literally dust off the old files, go back to the very beginning.
Looking at those initial tips again.
Exactly. And now, without the Joanna distraction, 3 tips suddenly seemed much more interesting.
What were they?
Tip 1. Someone saw a guy on a bike, leaning over a bridge barrier, looking into the river the night Annie died.
Okay.
Tip 2. Someone saw a young guy at Rotary Park around 2:30 that afternoon, muttering, "Won't get caught, won't get caught." Gave a description. Short, dark hair to his ears, gray shirt, blue shorts.
And the third.
Tip 3 was actually from Chris Bagshaw himself and his boyfriend at the time, saying they'd received threats from LJ.
Okay, so what's the connection?
The common thread in all 3, a teenager. It brought the focus back to the possibility of a young person being involved.
So less focus on shadowy adult figures like LJ or John, more on the teenagers.
Precisely. And they decided to dig deeper into Annie's phone records. They knew she got multiple calls from a blocked number that night, right up to the end.
They thought that blocked number had to be LJ.
That was the working theory. So they went back to the phone company, asked for subscriber info on that block's number, and they also requested call data for Chris's phone and Spencer's phone. Did they get calls from that same block number? Could they finally link LJ to someone tangible?
This feels like it could be the real turning point.
It was. When that phone data came back, it was, well, a stunning revelation. It blew the case wide open again.
What did it show?
It showed that pretty much everyone had been lying or withholding information, not just Joanna.
Everyone. Like who?
Well, first, the owner of that mysterious blocked number that called Annie repeatedly.
LJ.
Nope. It was Chris Bagshaw. He had a second phone, a burner phone.
Chris. He was the blocked number. Wow. Okay.
Huge, right? Then they re-interviewed Spencer Criddle, confronted him with the fact that the search warrant found no blood evidence at his house.
The nosebleed story.
Exactly. Spencer finally admits it. He never saw a nosebleed. He just said it because Chris told him to.
Chris asked him to lie.
Yep. And it wasn't just Spencer. Chris's family story started falling apart, too. His grandma, Wilma, she insisted Chris was asleep at her house from 7:45 p.m.
But the phone records
showed multiple calls between her and Chris well past midnight. She was clearly covering. And Chris's dad, Darwin, his timeline of Chris dozing off around 11:30 p.m. didn't match Chris calling Wilma at 12:47 a.m.
So the whole family was involved in maybe not knowing what happened, but covering for him.
Or maybe they were scared. Maybe they thought LJ was real and threatening them. That was a possibility investigators considered.
But the truth was simpler and much darker.
Much darker. Police tracked Chris down. He had moved to Colorado by this point. Confronted with the evidence, the phone records, he confesses.
What did he confess?
First, the big one, there is no LJ.
No LJ, and he made him up.
Apparently, yes. To make Chris jealous. That's what Chris claimed.
Wow. And Spencer?
Spencer was just being a loyal friend, Chris said. Protecting him, but totally unaware Chris was actually guilty. Chris admitted sending messages asking Spencer to lie about the nosebleed, about the shoes they took for testing. "So I don't get blamed," he wrote.
Wow. A total fabrication from the start.
A complete calculated cover-up, and his confession suddenly made all those weird little pieces fit.
Like the tips.
Exactly. The bike the witness saw by the river, similar to Chris's. The kid chanting, "Won't get caught" in the park. That was the day Chris skipped school.
And there was more.
Oh, yeah. Police found a crumpled note in Chris's trash can detailing Annie's disappearance, what she was wearing. Information only the killer would know that specifically.
And his behavior afterwards. The Facebook posts.
"Everyone wear red tomorrow. World is filled with hate." All seen now as attempts to look like a grieving friend, deflect any suspicion.
But the absolute clincher, the undeniable proof,
came from Annie's mom, Veronica. Remember she called Chris that Saturday night asking if he knew where Annie was?
Yeah.
Chris answered that call. Cell phone data placed that phone, right next to Annie's location near the bridge. just minutes after the estimated time of her death.
Irrefutable. He was there.
He was there, but why? What was the motive for such brutality?
Yes, you say.
Not directly to the police in that confession, but later, an inmate at the juvenile detention center came forward. Chris had apparently bragged to him.
Bragged? About what?
About why he did it. He'd found out Annie was telling people she was pregnant with his baby.
The lie that started it all.
The lie that ended her life. According to the inmate, Annie asked Chris to run away with her. He agreed to meet by the bridge, but he brought a shovel.
Oh my God.
He attacked her, hit her repeatedly in the face with the shovel until she was disfigured.
Oh.
Then he put the shovel on her forehead and jumped on it until she stopped moving.
That matches the injury the ME found.
Perfectly. The state medical examiner confirmed the injuries were consistent with that horrifying account, especially that specific devastating injury to her forehead.
So, Darwin Christopher Bagshaw, he was only 14 at the time.
Just 14, he was tried as an adult, pleaded guilty to first-degree murder.
And the sentence.
15 years to life. He'll be eligible for parole in 2034.
It's just chilling, especially thinking back to what Spencer said unknowingly on that recording before Chris was caught.
Yeah, no one had any idea that Chris may have been scheming his own murderous plans at this very moment. Gives you goosebumps.
It really does. When you look back at this whole case, the layers of lies are just staggering.
Absolutely. You have Annie's initial lie about pregnancy, driven by, her own tragic circumstances and desires.
Joanna's completely fabricated story, pure revenge that cost investigators a precious year.
And finally, Chris's incredibly elaborate, cold-blooded deception to cover up an absolutely horrific crime. It just shows how hard it is to find the truth when people are actively working to obscure it.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about deception itself. How someone so young could construct such lies, commit such violence.
And how easily things can escalate. A lie, a fear, jealousy, turning into something monstrous and irreversible.
Yeah. And it's a stark reminder for any investigation, really, how vulnerable the search for truth is when your main sources are actively trying to deceive you. A really sobering end to this deep dive.